All right, y'all, Leland Live, Talking Internet M5. Let's get back in here and keep going as we roll along tonight. 545-9950 is your phone number. Ox Foundation Solutions next up here on the show. I reached out to them just today. I've got a project I'm trying to pull together and may need some encapsulation for part of it. And if so, there's no doubt about it. It's going to be Ox that does the work for me. They're just good and I trust them. And that's the kind of thing, if you know, some things, if you have it done, you can kind of go back and check and see if it looks like it's done right. I wouldn't even know. I'm not going to crawl under there. It's just one of those things you got to have an expert you trust to get under there and do it the right way. And that's Ox. That's how they've built their reputation as just the best in the business for years and years all over the state of Alabama. And they do all the services. And when I say that, I mean house leveling, crack repair, water removal, any of these things that can pop up from time to time. They'll get that done for you. Sometimes that water will turn into other moisture and that can turn into mold. They do mold remediation. And that's something we talk a lot more about, of course, in the humidity of summertime. But then, of course, to prevent all that, after you get the mold removed, if you've got that and have any of these other problems, get that encapsulation done because as we talk about quite a bit, it's not just a vapor barrier, it's a thermal barrier. So when we get cold weather like we're going to have tomorrow night and really starting tonight, it'll keep some of that out of your house. And it also kind of gives another layer of protection for some of the infrastructure if you've got pipes underneath your house and all that. It's just smart, and they're the best. They'll get it done for you. It's oxstrong.com. Get them over to your house this season and let them take care of it, oxstrong.com. All right, man, we're just rolling through an afternoon here. 545-9950 is the phone number if y'all want to get in on the show, get in on the show. I want to go back to this voter fraud story that popped up this week. Any other time, like I said, we're living in times where we've got headlines all over the place, constant headlines all over the place. And it's funny what will consume us for a minute and then we sort of forget about. But if I had told you in 2021, after the 2020 election was flat out stolen, if I had told you that that the officials in Georgia were going to get raided and the FBI was going to show up and wind up with 700 boxes of material that they completely took out of there, and they were going to have the director of national intelligence would be on the ground, and the Democrats are freaked about this situation because I think they know the same truth we know, that something very, very wrong happened in that election, particularly in Atlanta. And it was different scenarios in each state as to how they pulled it off, but the phoniness, I've said this over and over, and I'll try to restate some things because I know it's been years, but they had a plan. They had a machine. They had an operation put together to develop ballots and truck them into locations and just manufacture them and get them into the polls. But they didn't do enough. And so that night, as the Trump total started coming in, it overwhelmed their system. And this was the most obvious explanation the night all that was going down when they shut down everything. But it overwhelmed their system to the point where they had to hit the pause button and shut down the operation and find more ballots. And that's exactly what they did. They had ballots that were trucked into Pennsylvania. We know about the midnight ballots that show up in the State Farm Arena after they shut down Georgia. And in Georgia, they came so close even after all the ballot stuffing. It was still only an 11,000 vote race. And we've just recently learned they had 315,000 ballots that were not even supposed to be counted. They were illegitimate ballots that went into the election. Now, 100% were probably for Joe Biden, but we'll never know that. The thing about, I used to have to cover, and I say cover, I got exposed to how election rigging works when I first got out of media, to be honest with you, and got into politics. There had been a few cases that I'd covered of some alleged cheating in certain counties, especially down in Greene County and Hale County. There used to always be problems down there with people stuffing boxes. And you read these legendary stories about it. I've talked before in the past about Jimmy Carter wrote a book. I think it was called Turning Point. He signed it for me back in the day, but it was about why he ever got in politics to begin with. It was a pretty fascinating book, tiny little book, but it was about ballot security. He knew they were stealing votes. In those days, you had this wooden box, and you put paper ballots in it, and it was supposed to have a seal on it, and you drive it to the main courthouse from the precinct, and then they open up the seal at the courthouse and count the ballots. Pretty good system, not foolproof, because here's the not foolproof part. Carter became aware of a group that was actually going to swap the boxes before they got to the courthouse. You know what I mean? They'd have a counterfeit box full of ballots that would show up and look legitimate under seal, and it took a lot of conspirators to do it. But he was under the presumption they were doing it again, the way the voting worked in Georgia at the time. And I believe this was when he was running for state senate or something. It's just been years since I read the book. The way it worked, they had this thing called the county unit system where 3 counties kind of voted together. It was to keep a check on the power in Atlanta. And Carter tells this story about how he followed one of the ballot boxes to make sure it got straight to the courthouse and didn't get diverted. And he got run off the road by somebody. Somebody forced him off the road to get him off the tail of the ballots. When you read it, it's a pretty dramatic story. But you go back and look at history and you see these things have always happened. So why did I take you all around that world? Well, mainly because it comes in different forms. And in 2020, it was highly sophisticated. Now we're talking about software issues, electronic counters. They created this phony mail-in system. COVID was an excuse for that. And if nothing, if you believe COVID was intentional, I know it was not man-made. We all know that now. It was man-made. It was not natural. And whether they let it out of the lab or it got out of the lab, it was highly convenient that they needed an emergency to change the election rules so that they could do this ballot operation. And they did. They did all of it. And we sat back and sort of watched them do it. And some people put up a fight and some didn't. But it turned out to be one of the most fraudulent things in the history of this country. So then all of a sudden, Tulsi Gabbard shows up, and so do the feds with a judge's order for a warrant. And we're still trying to read between the tea leaves as to what's going on here. Now, I went through some of this yesterday, and I'll do it again this hour just because it's heavy on my mind. Some people believe it's connected to the fact that we just took Maduro out, and that Venezuela has long been a source of some of the software that was used to build these vote rigging machines anyway. And that's all on the record. That's not speculation or conspiracy theories. Some of these companies got their source code for setting up these election machines, these ballot scanners, from down in Venezuela, which got the technology from the Chinese, which tells you a whole lot right there too. Man, there's just so much about this story. So suddenly the elements that you would suspect are there. You've got Tulsi Gabbard's on the scene. A judge suddenly gives a warrant. Venezuela is open for us to investigate what was happening on their end. And this may have national security implications or treasonous implications, as would be her purview and not Pam Bondi or Kash Patel or one of those people. So there have been reactions that have come in this afternoon, and I'm watching the Democrats. One of these guys, I was seeing that's what kind of triggered me to go back through some of this stuff this hour. I forget who it is. Some guy, I think it's one of the senators out of Virginia, want to try to make it. No, it's this Dan Goldman. Have y'all ever seen this guy talk? What a putz. He just filed a bill to ban the Trump administration and the Department of Justice from investigating voter fraud nationwide, including election records, ballot boxes, and voting machines. Now, why would he do that? If there was no stolen election and the balloting was secure, and he feels pretty confident in that, why go to the trouble to try to make it prohibitive for the government to investigate the elections? So if a president can't do it or the DOJ can't do it, who can do it? You're going to let the fox guard the hen house at that point. These guys want to grade their own homework and tell you it was all fine, just accept the results and move on with your life. And that's exactly what the narrative was after that. Y'all, this was it was obvious at the time, but without a whole lot of proof. And now we're in times where the proof may still be around that they can be pieced together to do something conclusive. And I'll be watching this Georgia case as closely as I've ever watched anything. 545-9950 is the phone number. If y'all want to get on the phone, do it. We'll start with Country Philosopher over here on line 3. What's up, Country Philosopher?
Today, man.
Hey, man.
Hey, listen, I wanted to throw two things out there. One of them is that COVID, yes, it was man-made, but I believe it was intentionally released. I believe they knew that it was going to be, not as lethal as people thought. I think the reason that COVID was released was so that the government could test just how far the American people would go once they were scared. Everybody would wear a mask. Everybody would stay in. So there's that. I wanted to throw that out there. Now, I run two channels. I run a TikTok channel and I run a YouTube channel. And I put things out, random stuff. You know, I don't have a niche. I just talk about what I like to talk about. And right now my TikTok channel is locked down because earlier this week I put a funny little video out. And basically the premise is the Democrats are this stupid that they're going to do this. And so I'll tell you what it is. We all know that the 2020 election was stolen. We know it was. All right? I mean, at this point, the only people that refuse to acknowledge that are partisan hacks from the left. So we know that, all right? So here's how crazy the Democrats are. They will come around and admit that that election was stolen and that Trump should have been president because he was elected, and then they'll say, because he was elected and no president can serve 3 terms, he has to be removed from this term. I know that sounds crazy, but you know what, man? It's just crazy enough for one of those nitwits to try. You watch.
Good Lord,
and that's
okay.
what got me locked up on TikTok.
I got you, man. Okay, that's the way to lay it down. It's look, we got to find it out. People say the excuse that you can't undo the election. It will change something. We've still got elections to do in this country. We've got to move forward with elections that we trust. And none of us that were cynical about it then have been convinced that we were wrong. We've only found more evidence that we were right. So, yeah, it needs to be fixed. Let's go to Joe in Birmingham. We'll keep going. Line 1. Joe, what's up, buddy?
Hey, yeah, and I'm sure you recognize this too. The Democrats always telegraph what they're going to do. And I'll give you some examples. Well, the most recent was when they took the files. I don't know what position he was that said this, but he was, something regarding the voting. He said, now our records have been taken and we can no longer secure them. So, in my opinion, that's going to be their battle cry, that Trump took these and now they've changed the thing of what we did that was accurate, and now it's not. And I'll give you a couple other examples. In 2020, when Nancy Pelosi stood up there and said, we're going to take, she was talking to the states that she was going to take, Pennsylvania, Texas. And Texas, I remember distinctly because I just didn't believe that to be true. And they knew they had this whole plan set up. They knew they were going to win in areas where they haven't won before. And another example is the Microsoft guy. I can't remember, his name escapes me for the moment. Before the COVID came out, I don't remember if it was 4 or 5 months before. I don't remember exactly. But he said we need to be aware or prepare. We run drills or whatever for I don't know that he said virus, but he just made it, my memory, say like, some massive undertaking of a disease or something like that.
Yeah.
He was alluding to what he was, in my opinion, one of the, quote, I never believed in Illuminati and all that before, but, these guys, more and more, I do believe they are sitting there thinking they're the kings of the world because they have such high ranking in their quote-unquote innovation of the internet and all that. It's just, I don't know. They'll always, that's been my observation. There's others I can't think of now, but they'll telegraph it in advance of what they're going to do.
Yeah, they will. And it's projecting, and sometimes actually the CIA actually has a playbook that does things like this. They call it conditioning the ground before you go in with an operation. So you get people subject, sort of conditioned to use certain language or to accept certain concepts before they start happening, so that there's not such a shock and a whiplash or a disbelief, and they'll start projecting some of these issues. Lately, they do just what's called projection, where they'll blame what they're doing. They'll accuse you of what they're doing, and then that clouds the water as well. So when you accuse them back, it just sounds like name calling to low information people that don't pay attention.
Exactly. It's just crazy, but you listen to them close enough, you can get a general idea of their play.
Thanks, Joe. Good call, man. Do y'all really think? I mean, in my heart of hearts, I love to see the FBI raid. I like seeing some of the arrests, but will there be convictions? Will anybody of significant note actually spend time behind bars for what they've done? Because we never see it happen. Hillary Clinton skated. Hunter Biden skated. Ilhan Omar is probably going to skate. Jeffrey Epstein was killed in prison. They finally nabbed him after a ton of pressure, and they had to go back and revisit the case. He got a slap on the wrist. These powerful people have a double standard. Then you look at the case today with this Luigi Mangione. You get a sense, and I understand the judge made a technical argument, but you get a sense sometimes when you look at these cases that perhaps these judges, well, let me say it this way. There's a different standard of justice if the judge agrees with your politics. Does that make sense? You are not subject to the same standards if the judge agrees with your politics. Craziness. All right, we need to do a break. Let's get that in here. Distinctive Pools bringing you the show tonight. DistinctivePools.com. Y'all, that's Gary Levesque. What a great guy. He's also a veteran. We got a lot of veteran business owners on the show. What matters to you is his 4+ decades of experience in the pool building business, in the hardscape business, and what he's able to pull off at your house. Because my best advice, and I say it almost every time we talk about Distinctive, is you just don't want to put an ugly pool on your house. You need to put something that's beautiful, that's well built, that looks like it fits your house, like it's always been there, that it's part of it, it's integrated, it's not some add-on. And then when it's nice like that, it's a feature piece and not a liability if you ever sell your house or market your house or whatnot. And you get all kind of opinions on pools. Some people say, oh, it's so much work. Well, not nowadays. Nowadays, the technology's changed to the point where you really can manage it and manage it well and affordably with some of the new ways people do things with pools. Let Gary and his team explain it. Let them get you a design and a plan, develop a budget, find you financing. They've got finance companies that specialize in pools that'll come help you out. It's distinctivepools.com. Y'all reach out to them at Distinctive Pools. You can see some of the beautiful projects they've done there, and you'll get all fired up and excited. Winter just happens to be a really good time to get one of these kind of projects done. DistinctivePools.com. It's 326 Leland Live, Talk 99.5. Y'all get on back in here. Alabama Gold Refinery. Gold's been up and down, and it's going through a down period now. Remember the last few days when it ran up and it just went crazy. We were going, what is going on? It seems like there was a lot of institutional investment around the world. Some of that had to be to do with the Japanese currency markets. Gold's worldwide, and so some upward pressure and some big governments and institutions starting to buy it did a huge run up, and now it's had a huge drop. So day to day, it can move. It tends to intrinsically just always hold its value. So if you had sold in the last few days when it was high, you did pretty good. You got cashed out at the right time. No sense in trying to time it. And if you want to understand it better, reach out to, of course, Steve over at Alabama Gold Refinery, and he'll tell you what's what. He knows the what's what about all this stuff. This is his livelihood, and here's a secure place and a fair place to get these kind of things done day in and day out. I just trust Steve to do right by you, as he has for years with a lot of our folks that are here on the show and listen to the show and participate in what we do every day. And they've got a great central location over in Homewood, right there near the main drag, across from the Regions Bank. Easy in, easy out, all the security you would expect. But gold, man, if you want to get in on the gold party, it is a roller coaster right now. I didn't even look to see. I'll check that during the break. Well, heck, I'll just check it right now because it is a headline story in addition to it being something that Steve and them deal with. Let's see where it wound up for the day. Yeah, it was a down day, down 9% for the day, and it is back down under 5,000 at 48.77. What a swing in the I would say the last 7 to 10 days. So whether you're buying or selling, I'll put it this way. If you're in the buying mode, you see how high it can get, and it'll quickly go back there sometimes. And if you're in the selling mode, we don't know when the slide's going to continue, but that's still a lot of money for an ounce of gold. Same thing with silver, platinum, all the currencies out there really, really getting interesting. Y'all, it's Alabama Gold Refinery, AGR, alabamagoldrefinery.com. Okay, let's keep going. What is it? Almost 3:30. We got to get the bottom of the hour break. I was just noticing some weather maps popping up. We should get some new forecast models. We're within range where forecasters can actually see the elements of the weather coming in, on their systems and with their indicators and on their radar. So their predictions get super accurate by the time we get to this point. So if anything else changes in the forecast, I think what would be fun is a little bit of snow accumulation, but it doesn't look too likely. But they've still got it in there for part of South Alabama. Largely, this does look like a sort of a Georgia and Carolina event, and they're talking about maybe a foot or so of snow, one of the biggest snows on record, especially in North Carolina this weekend. So there's that. Bottom of the hour, Leland Live, Talk 99.5. We'll be back here in just a minute. Y'all stay tuned. All right, y'all. Leland Live, Talking at M5. Let's go. Michelson Laser Vision. I've talked about them so many times on the show over the years, and many of you have heard the story by now, my backstory about why I chose to do it. I think the reason I always try to go there is because I wore glasses for 30 years. I was the least likely candidate in the world, even though medically I was eligible, and I had no idea. I didn't know that, but I just was squishy about it. I was cheap about it. I didn't want to spend the money, even though I was wasting tons of money on contacts and prescriptions and all those doctor visits every year and all the stuff you have to do with that. But I could not, it's a pun, but I just couldn't see it. I just didn't want to have laser surgery. And so I probably would not have gone down to Michelson on my own. I got invited down because they wanted to come on the show. And so that's when I had to get educated. I didn't have any choice. They were going to teach me how it works. And that's when I felt kind of almost foolish. I went, well, now I understand. That seems reasonable. Check me out. I was skeptical. I told Dr. Mark, but I'm going to be honest with you. There was part of me that thought, I hope I'm not eligible so I don't have to make this decision. And sure enough, he said, piece of cake. We can really help you to see better. And my confidence grew with that education and with that knowledge that they could do it. So I did it. And it's one of the best things I've ever done. I'm so glad I'm going on 7 years now. My vision hasn't changed. Now, we're all human beings, and I guess you could age back into losing some of your sight, and maybe that happens to some people. But I've got friends that are 15 years on and still have the same vision. So, and having readers, for example, every now and then that I will use for low light situations or just, a lot of computer use, just, those low level, I'd use like -1s, I think is what they're called, little light readers. That's not a big inconvenience compared to all the stuff I was going through with those glasses and contacts. Y'all, it's Michelson Laser Vision. They're downtown UAB Highlands, MichelsonLaserVision.com. Okay, here it is on a Friday. Headlines popping all over the place. We've gone through quite a bit of those. I've seen some polling today too, and sometimes I can poll nerd out and let you know about what's going on with that. There's polling that's, we used to call it a generic ballot test, which basically means you're just testing the party's brand. And the thing to be cautious about, and I see people putting these polls out today. I've seen a couple of them on Fox. You've got the brand test is interesting, but when people go to the polls, especially in midterms, it's really about the individuals running, especially being inundated with TV and mailbox stuff. And here all that comes for the year. Phone calls and everything they do to harass you into voting for them nowadays. And sometimes it does feel like borderline harassment. I guess they will never be as bad as these lender people that are blowing me up. Can I do a sidebar on this right now? Do you get these calls, AJ? They just nonstop. They'll it's like, I guess, home equity line or whatever. Mm-hmm. I'll get 40 a day. Now there's a setting on the iPhone now that can kind of screen them. So you don't really have to see it ring. Hit decline or hang up on them or do whatever, or go to block them. It'll just filter them out and put them on the side. But it still clogs up your inbox. Yeah. I keep getting these notices that, your inbox is full. It's like, why is my inbox full? Because I get 40 messages from generic computer calls. Anyway, you get those?
I do get those a lot. And it is so frustrating because I'm thinking sometimes I'm expecting a call from somebody and it'll pop up on my phone and it's like a number I don't recognize. So then I pick up. And then once it's like there's like this pause, and then you'd be like, "Hello, this is so and so for."
This is Peter. I'm like, this is Peter Johnson.
Yeah,
like, no, you're not. No, you're not
stop. Just stop.
Your mama didn't name you Peter.
Yeah. So I apologize to anybody if I don't properly save your number in my phone and you try to call me. I probably blocked you, not because I don't like you. It's just that I get so many calls sometimes that it's kind of hard to filter out who is who. And then sometimes, even when here on the at the radio station, right, I'll get these phone calls, right, and either come in on our super secret hotline, and
that all the telemarketers have.
Yeah. I don't know how they got the number, right? Who put the number out? And I'll get a call like, yes, this is for your home warranty. I'm like,
oh yeah.
Do you not know who this is?
Put them in the mix too. I've got a hard line on my house that I really just kind of had to set up with the security system when I got the house, and I tried to cancel it because I wasn't using that particular version anymore. But the little service provider company said, well, it's only $5. And, so I just left it on. So there is a phone attached to it. Then I thought, well, in emergencies, if all the cell towers go down, I've got to back up my hard line. And it's literally off in a corner in a basement in a room. AJ, that phone rings about 2 or 3 times a day. Nobody has the number. It's never been published. I don't even know the number. I don't use the number. I know I've got a hard line coming into the house. That thing rings 2 or 3 times a day. I'll just hear it down there in that little room ringing away. They're just auto dialing random numbers until they hit on one, and then they start. The thing is, I've read that if you decline or block or report spam, that actually makes it worse, because then they know based on that a real person was at that number, and then they can aggregate it from there. And then some of them, of course, have full-fledged databases of who you are. Now back to the politicians. So we're about to be getting spammed by all that too, and so here we go with the election year. But the thing to know is, while this sounds good for Republicans, there's a poll out today that Republicans generically, in the generic ballot test, are leading the Democrats on some very, very key issues, on economic issues, on the border, on immigration, on crime. And those are good issues. Those are interesting issues. Probably not. Some of the affordability stuff has been branded well by the Democrats, even though they're the ones that cause. These guys love to set a fire and then blame somebody else for the fire and then come out like they're going to put it out now. But yeah, it's one of those things. So Republicans are showing up in those generic ballot tests, but again, that goes completely out the window once you have a dogfight of an election and people call each other nasty names, and it becomes, as we know in a lot of our elections, the lesser of two evils. You really don't like either one. You're flipping a coin, and some people do that. They're not party loyalists, and they're not going to vote on brand, but anything is anything. Anything is publicity at this time of the year as things get to rolling along. But here comes the election year and all the stuff that goes with that. Meantime, Congress still locked down. The optics of that here in the midterm elections, probably not good for anybody. I largely believe most of the country is just going to ignore this showdown in the Senate. I was scrolling here to see if anything had developed this afternoon, because at the latest, the House takes off and just goes home. So now, even if the Senate were to come to some compromise over the shutdown before tonight, there's not going to be anybody there to do it on the House side, so it's moot. So in all likelihood, the last report, we had Lindsey Graham grandstanding over some personal pet bill he has. I think it was over sanctuary cities, and he also had something about when all the senators got their phones swept up in that investigation, that raid, that Arctic frost thing, where they didn't know their numbers were being surveilled. Oh, it's a big deal when it happens to them, isn't it? Anyway, so all that's in the news today. We'll keep an eye on the Senate if they decide to make a move or do something interesting. I'm dubious, but we'll be watching it as well. Let's go to Alabama Dental Associates, alabamadental.com. Y'all, this is my dentist. It's AJ's dentist. It's my family's dentist. A lot of my friends go to Dr. Brian and the team. And look, with 4 dentists, it's a kind of a mega practice. You got single dentists practicing. Those guys are great. I've had some great dentists over the years. But with 4 of them, they're able to stretch their staff hours and their hours out to make it more convenient for you. And that's pretty cool to be able to have your office stay open as late as 7 o'clock at night, so you can get in there after work sometimes, or maybe after you get the kids picked up at school. Same thing on Saturday hours. Really nice to be able to do some of these kind of chores, these routine maintenance things like keeping your teeth up on the weekends. And that's what they do for you. And with the 4 dentists, by design, they've decided to have 4 different specialties. So they've got a diversity of experience, a lot of experience, years under their belt, and just all the technology you would expect in a high-tech, modern dental practice to solve a myriad of problems, things you may not have been able to solve years ago. Let them help you. Let them take care of you. Become a patient at Alabama Dental, too. It's called alabamadental.com. Dr. Brian and the whole team over there, alabamadental.com. We'll be back in just a minute, Leland Live. All right, y'all. Lanius Furniture Company bringing you the show tonight. LAUNIUS, LaniusFurnitureCompany.com. Y'all, what a shopping experience up there. If you don't have a whole lot to do tomorrow and you're just trying to stay indoors all day, go to Lanius. Go walk around, browse around. You might get some ideas. I know even I've got a house full of stuff. Really don't have room for anything else, but man, I'll see something and go, I got to have that. I got to find a place for it. Maybe I got to get rid of something. Because the deals, the beauty of what they have, the latest styles, all the stuff you want in your home. John and Reggie and those guys really put something together special a couple of years ago when they decided to build a superstore. And there you are, LaniusFurnitureCompany.com. They're in the little town of Kimberly, kind of an unexpected place. If you've listened to the show for years, you understand that we talk about that. It's a small town environment, but a big store. You can't find this kind of selection in Atlanta. I think the only store I've ever been in that's bigger with more selections probably like an IKEA, one of those big old places. And this is not that cheap, screwed together stuff. This is real, durable, solid, last for generations furniture. And they've got it for you at Lanius with all the help you need or no help at all. If you just want to be left alone so you can think, they get that. They see that every day, and they're happy to let you just take your time. Go get lunch and come back and think about it some more. Because there's a lot to look at, and it's worth the trip. The thing about the trip itself, to me, it's even more time efficient. Probably takes me from where I live maybe about 45 minutes, almost an hour to get there if I were to go to the store from my home. But it's worth it because it would take me that long to keep bouncing to places all over town and compare some pricing and trying to remember what I looked at where and getting overwhelmed by it. Just do it all in one place. With some of the finest people in the business, it's Lanius Furniture Company, LAU, LaniusFurnitureCompany.com, LAUNIUS, exit 280, I-65, Lanius Furniture Company. All right, where we at, AJ? Make sure I'm not skipping out on the calls while we get the rest of the show going. Let me take on something real quick. It's the Epstein files. They've been out for a little while today. More of them. There were about, I guess it was about 300,000 of those files came out. Or 3 million pages of files. And so a lot of folks started salivating and looking for their political opponents in the files. So what we have right now, if I had to generalize it, and this is just based on the stuff that's come across in the last couple of hours as people pick through them, there are no bombshells, there's no smoking gun, but a lot of embarrassing material. And largely the two names that have come up the most this afternoon are Bill Gates and Prince Andrew, kind of the usual suspects. Now, I think we've not had this much information on Bill Gates that it's that definitive that he was 100% in the middle of all this stuff. Now, we knew from the past that his wife left him because he was spending too much time with Epstein, and she got a creep factor from this guy. And I think behind the scenes now we know she was aware of some of, especially his creepy, perverted activities. There's one notation in one of the first files that was found today that he had actually asked Epstein to help him get some kind of antibiotics or drugs for his wife because he thought he had picked up an STD from hanging out with all the Russian girls that Epstein had hooked him up with. What? Now, we don't even know what he means by girls, and that's the sick part of this whole thing, too. One part of Epstein, too, is everybody that was involved, some of the young women that were involved, they weren't all completely, quote, underage. So that's something that's of note, too. There's one note here about apparently Prince Andrew actually invited Epstein to fly to England and attend a private dinner at Buckingham. And he wanted to bring him into the castle. We don't know if that's to cover something up or to just so they could woo each other. It's just weird. It's so sick. So that's in there. Some anti-Trump people, low information people earlier today were trying to intimate that Trump's all in the documents. And so I started looking, going, well, what do they have? They don't have anything. It's the same stuff we've heard about before, that in around 2020, they started getting anonymous tips in the FBI about Trump and making up wild allegations of Trump and a 13-year-old and all this other stuff. And so they pursued it. Remember 2020, it wasn't Kash Patel's FBI. These people would have done anything to have something substantial on Trump. They wouldn't have had to manufacture stuff. So if you think they got a hot tip like this, that Trump was involved in the abuse of children and minors at his properties or with Epstein, that wouldn't have become front and center as fast as humanly possible. It didn't happen. The FBI went about their business to follow up on the tips, couldn't substantiate anything. No other witnesses, no exchange of messages, no dates, times, no names of victims, nothing that made these anonymous tips worthwhile. But they're in the file because everything that comes in to any kind of police file is in the file. I had a prosecutor show me one time years ago. I was young and impressionable and covering criminal trials, and some nitpicky stuff had come up during the trial from the defense. It was an evidentiary argument, and I don't even remember the specifics, but I do remember this visual that I got. So I go back to the prosecutor's office later that evening. They had adjourned for the day while the attorneys in the case worked some things out. And I went over to ask him some questions about their disposition because I had to file a story that day. The trial had pretty much been short-circuited by this fight. And I remember he whips out, this was in the days where everything was paper. And this dude, you see these lawyers coming in with really just little wheelies with file box after file box of case documents that they'll thumb through and reference during the course of a case. But he starts whipping out these files that are 3 or 4 inches thick and just piling them on his desk. He says, "You want to see how much stuff we have to deal with just to do a case like this? It should take 5 days." And he goes, and most of that is stuff I can't even use. It's not useless that's useless in a prosecution, but it has to be done. That's our system. He was making a point to me that when you're sweeping up information about anything that you're investigating, you've got to gather everything and then sort it out, even stuff that's erroneous. There are times I recall just on crime scenes when police are looking for tips because somebody got shot, and they'll start canvassing a neighborhood. And some people will talk to the cops just to have something to say or to misdirect them. And they will sit there and send them down the wrong roads, think they heard something, make stuff up, just completely sit there and lie on a police report about what they did or didn't see. And sometimes have no connection to the case. They're not involved in it, not protecting anybody, just want to have something to say. And we see that now. That's called social media, where everybody just makes stuff up because they got to have something to say. But the cops, what do? They can't stand there typically with their notebook if they're taking, let's just say they're taking notes like back in the day, and say, "Well, I'm going to throw that away. That's got to be bull squeeze." It goes in the file. Everything goes in the file. They collect a fingerprint that's not from the scene or not connected to anybody and not part of the case, but it goes in the file. And then when the defense attorneys get a hold of a client and they've got to defend that client, they get to see all the information as well. It's the information that implicates their client, and then the exculpatory information, the stuff that might exonerate their client or may have nothing to do with the case, but it's what the government gathered when it was trying to make its case. So if you lawyers out there and folks that do this for a living probably are laughing at my simplistic way to explain it, but that's just how I used to see it, of how complicated and difficult it is when you put this together. Now, let's just take the Epstein case. 3 million, 3 million pages or files out today, 3.5 million, hundreds of hours of tapes and documents. So I think people get excited at the volume of it, but a lot of that is the excruciating amount of stuff they gathered only to not have everything they needed, it appears, before he killed himself to actually make a conviction or get anything else done. It's frustrating to the public, knowing pretty well that this guy was running some kind of operation. It seems as if to be a compromise operation, and everybody's got their theories on who was being compromised. But in the end, they gathered this stuff, and folks think they're going to piece it together and make a case, and you're not going to make a case. Here's what happens. We've just got the events of just last weekend of that dude getting shot to show how quickly people will cherry pick a few facts, determine how a case ought to be, and dig in, and that's all they're ever going to think. And they've done this with Epstein. So today we get this document dump, and there's files spilled out all over the place, and people will rifle through there to find something on somebody they don't like and post it online, if nothing to embarrass them, and they still don't have a big criminal. There's no criminal smoking gun in any of the stuff that's going to implicate anybody that was involved in it. And that's also super frustrating and a huge letdown to people that would like to see these young ladies get some justice. Now, for their part, the Justice Department today has said this Todd Blanche came out, and he's the one that did the newser on the release. And this fulfills the obligations of the law that Congress passed back when the Democrats, remember how we got here, the Democrats pivoted to Epstein when the government shutdown failed. And then they highly regretted it when Bill Clinton was the first well-documented person associated with Epstein. And then they got super quiet about it, but the law was still there. The Republicans called their bluff, passed the law. The law required justices to just put it all out in public. Whether it was responsible or irresponsible, they stick it all out in public. And here's another counterpoint to all that, too. Let's say there is a case to be made. Let's say that the FBI was on to something, but it was going to take more work, or they needed to preserve some things from public knowledge to eventually make a case that was still within the statute of limitations. That's all over now. They've spilled the information into the public, which pollutes everything about the case, the jury pool, the evidence itself. It would be impossible now to bring any of these guys to justice with a document dump full of substantiated and unsubstantiated information out into the public. Because remember, what the Congress required wasn't that they only put out the legitimate stuff. They said everything. Remember the mantra? We all said, we want to see it all. So you got to see it all today. And so far, this has been out since probably, I want to say at least 4 hours, maybe 5, when the Epstein files first got to being circulated when they did the news conference. And as of this hour, I still haven't seen anybody find anything in there that's a legit smoking gun. It's just these tawdry details about people we've long known were associated with Epstein and had some relationship with him, whether it involved illicit activities or not. That's what we're dealing with this afternoon. Y'all have heard me explain that over and over and over. It is a frustrating and sad case in this country's history, but maybe there's some good that can come out of it. Maybe witnesses will still come forward. But my pedestrian understanding of the way these cases are built is that they'll never be able to convict people now that you've spilled all the garbage out onto the road. It's just that way. It's sad. All right, let's keep on moving. Let's talk about Hueytown Palm. My man Tommy over there absolutely has a great deal right now. He says he's going to let me keep talking about these till he sells them all. I don't know how many he purchased, but he said till they run out. These ATI AR platform short rifles. They call them AR pistols. You can talk to Tommy about the official designation and how they came up with that. But right now they're only $349.99 for an AR. Are you kidding me? Yeah, they've got them in stock, ready to go till they run out. Still got a huge selection of sound suppression. Y'all have been snapping those up, especially since the tax law went away. Some dealerships are still struggling to get their hands on those. Tommy bought them up months ago, so they've got a vault full of those scopes, the Vector scopes, an incredible line of hunting and outdoor gear, personal carry, even pre-owned stuff. Yeah, it's a pawn shop. They started as a pawn shop, but over time they've evolved into a really full-fledged, very nice gun shop. Y'all go and see them. It's Hueytown Pawn over in Hueytown, Brook Lane Drive. Lead 'em live back here in just a minute. Y'all stay tuned.